As far as enrolling a boy at the school, this school would probably not consider a student that needs any English language program prior to enrolment.
Okay.
It's a very fast pace that the classes are taught at. Boys need to be able to, as I said, hit the ground running, and there's not a lot of language support provided.
However, if they were enrolling in Year 7 and they only needed that 4 to 6 weeks, they would consider him.
Okay. I want to scroll through some pictures while I'm talking about the school.
But anything over that.
Okay.
Yep.
You want me to?
Oh, if you just wanted to find, scroll through the various pages while I'm talking about
sure,
it. Yeah.
sure. Enrollments?
Yeah. So as far as the enrolment side, because the school's with ABSI, you don't need to go through
just normal process
through the process on the school's web page. This is why I said if you had an EOI, that basically just needs to be submitted with a copy of the student's passport, latest 2 academic reports, a completed school application, which can be found on the website, or for all ABSI schools and agents, you should have access to the portal.
Yeah.
Do you have that?
Yeah, we have that.
Yeah. So from the ABSI portal, you should be able to get all our application forms, fee schedules, term dates, all the information really that you need to provide to a parent. English assessment testing is mandatory for any school within the ABSI group. We won't give an answer yes or no on a successful application until we've seen the student's English ability.
It's preferably not IELTS.
Okay.
Yeah.
Preferably AES.
I start online, but normally AEAS is the one, and that is only because IELTS isn't designed really to assess a student for secondary school education in Australia. It's more a tertiary based assessment. It's not rated against the normed data of a current Australian student, so it doesn't really give us a good indication of where that student fits compared to a current Australian studying student.
But if the student's parents want to check, what kind of range, 50 to 60 or 60 to 70, you still cannot provide the answer for that.
Oh, look, we could give a indication.
Okay.
But it's really look. Some school, depending what school we're going into.
Yes.
Thank you.
It depends what school the student's going into, what language support's available at the school, what year group they're entering. For instance, the King's School, a Year 7 student needing more than 10 weeks of high school preparation would be unlikely to be considered.
Okay.
The Hills Grammar School, on the other hand, would probably consider a Year 7 student that required up to 30 weeks of English preparation, because they're set up to deal with a student needing that support. They've got their own ELICOS centre, they've got staff that will assist the students in that transition from high school preparation through to mainstream. So they're more equipped to cope with a student with greater language needs than the King's School or Brisbane Grammar. So there's no magic number.
Okay.
We will look at every applicant and we can certainly tell fairly early in the piece whether that student has a chance of being successful in their enrolment.
And we appreciate that the parents always want to know what their son or daughter needs to attain.
Okay, yeah.
But it doesn't just come down to that magic number.
Yeah.
All of our schools look at every component of a student's application, right through to what their sporting abilities, their interests, all of that, their music ability, that's taken into consideration as well. So,
yeah, a very comprehensive application.
Yes, yes. And that allows each of our schools to develop a whole student, not just
a score. Not just a score.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So,
okay. Okay.
So if we sort of went through all our schools, Brisbane Grammar School that we've looked at, boys boarding school, year 5 to 12.
Year 5 to 12.
Year 5 to 12. So they don't have a junior school.
So starting from year 5, they can already boarding with the school. Or,
they
are looking at that in the future. Currently, it's year 7.
Okay.
They may in the future, once all the refurbishments have been completed, look at a year 5 or year 6 boy for boarding. More than likely, though, that boy would need to have an older brother already boarding at the school.
Okay.
So it'd be unlikely that they would take a year 5
or
boy
6
straight in, yes, unless they had an older brother there. So no junior school at Brisbane Grammar, simply from year 5.
Okay. And could you please just briefly introduce like the boarding system in Australia? Like normally how many students are supervised by how many staff? Kind of that information. Just briefly.
Well, it's normally each year group would have a supervisor.
Yeah.
There's always staff present, like that live in the boarding house.
Yeah.
Always staff in the boarding house throughout the day. So if a boy wasn't feeling well and needed to go back to the boarding house, there is a nurse, a school nurse that Brisbane Grammar School have like a 24-hour like registered nurse in their boarding house. So there's always, I guess, a parent really, a parent presence there to look after them. A lot of the boarding house mothers or fathers, we I guess call them, are older adults. I think there was talk when we were at one of the schools the other day that sometimes some uni students can be like working in some boarding houses. So you may have a like 20-year-old looking after a like 17-year-old. That doesn't happen. That doesn't happen in our boarding houses. They're the welfare of like all students, whether they're local Australian students or international students, is absolutely paramount in the boarding houses.
And all the boarding houses provided an afternoon, a school day would finish, the children would all return to the boarding house and it's afternoon tea, and I think they get to relax until dinner. Then it's depending on the boarding house. Sometimes they have family tables, which means there'll be year 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7 all around one table, or depends on what the program is for that particular boarding house. They all have dinner, clean up, and then all the children are off to prep. And they're 7 to 8, 9 to 10, 11 to 12. They all have different areas. They're all supervised.
Which prep is homework time. For those that don't know,
and they're all tutors are always at hand. The schools bring in extra tutors around examination time, and they're there always to assist the students. Essay writing, or if they've got projects that need completing, they're always made available for the students. And that's just included in the day-to-day life in the boarding house. Obviously, if a student might be struggling in a particular subject area, the school may recommend that a private tutor be appointed for a 12-week period or whatever, or the parents might want a private tutor.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's something that
Right.
the family would negotiate with the school.
Okay.
So during the boarding process, every day they will be provided 3 meals,
Yes.
Yes.
including the weekends, right?
Oh,
Yes,
yes.
yes. So some, depending which school they're in, some boarding houses, the boys go back to the boarding house at lunchtime and eat in the boarding house. Other boarding houses have their food prepared for them. So most of the kids can actually say, I'd like this for lunch, I'd like a sandwich or a salad, and that will be prepared for them, and then they can go and pick it up, or it's delivered to their
central
Okay.
place, and they eat with all their the day students as well.
Yeah.
All of their laundry's done for them.
Okay.
They don't have to worry about washing that, just have to put their clothes that require laundering into a specific place, and magically, just like at home, they're clean.
Yeah.
Oh, thanks.
Just like living a hotel,
That's
better than
right,
hotel.
yeah.
Better
Oh,
than
yeah,
hotel.
well, yeah, maybe some of the dining. Oh, the food.
I'd like to
Yes.
move in actually myself to some of the boarding houses.
Have everything taken care of
Yes.
by someone. Yeah.
And
There's a
look,
question.
we can.
There's a question there. There's a
Yeah.
question on the group.
I have a book. It's book. Yeah. I think so. You say the main intake for breast milk grandma is yes.
Okay, so Bo, in answer, hello, how are you? Nice to meet you. But in answer to your question, Year 7, yes, is one of the major intake. Year 5 and Year 7 are the main intake years for Brisbane Grammar. They increase the cohorts for those year groups. However, they certainly will consider a student in any year group for international students. They are unlikely, though, to look at a student that needs any ELICOS prior. So if you've got a student that's considering Brisbane Grammar, they are probably better to do their ELICOS program first before applying.
Okay.
Yeah. We have had a couple that they've issued conditional offers for, subject to a successful HSP course. One in particular, didn't go as planned. I think the offer may have been threatened to be withdrawn. So they don't like to go down that path.
Okay.
So they would prefer to know that the students English is already up to scratch before accepting them into.
Very rarely would they accept directly into Year 11.
Okay. Right.
Yes,
Okay.
yeah.
Right, okay.
That's most of the schools I won't say most of the schools won't accept a Year 11 student, but they prefer them coming in at least term 3 in Year 10, just to establish themselves into the school. And
okay, right.
yeah,
Okay, that
and
makes
look,
sense,
that's much better for the student
Yeah.
as well, because there's a lot to overcome in that first term, at least, maybe a semester. And I think we all know how demanding Year 11 and 12 curriculum is. So it's really good for them to form friendships, know a routine, and not have to worry about that as well before starting Year 11. But look, for the right student, Year 11 may be a consideration, but that would be sort of assessed per applicant.
Yeah. So next one, which school you want to talk about?
Well, let's have a look at Clayfield. That's
Okay,
what we're
sure.
into here. So Clayfield is the girls' boarding school that we represent in Brisbane.
Brisbane, yeah.
It's probably about 5 to 10 minutes away from Brisbane Grammar School, so still reasonably central to Brisbane CBD. A smaller school, and that's how the school is intending to remain as a smaller school. They like to have more sort of one-on-one, I guess, like with students, be able to apportion more student-teacher time. The boarding house is located on campus, but across the road from the main school. I think it actually used to be a private hospital.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So every girl that's in boarding,
Year 12.
or in year 12, yes. So
Yeah.
year 12, every girl in boarding is either in a single room or a twin share room.
Yeah.
And all the year 12 girls have single rooms with their own ensuite and balcony.
Yeah.
So,
Very nice.
so they feel like quite special, I think, in year 12.
That's a school that the ex-Governor General, Quentin Bryce,
Yes, Quentin
attended,
Bryce attended Clayfield College.
Clayfield College. So a very highly regarded girls' boarding school in Queensland.
Yeah. Wonderful facilities again, as have all our schools. They've got their own pool on campus, gymnasium, which I think that's open to the boarding girls on weekends and afternoons as well.
A wonderful outdoor education where the boarding staff will take the girls to country Queensland to get a bit of experience. And quite often some of the Chinese students look up and say, "We've never seen stars before."
Yeah, that's true.
That's true.
Yes.
That is true.
So, yeah, a very popular excursion.
Great, right.
Yeah.
So we might have a look at.
Now, Clayfield College
Clayfield.
are very much looking for applicants. They've
Yeah.
got room in their boarding house, and they've got room for all intake years from 7 through to year 10.
Right.
And they will still look at 2019
Yes.
applicants as
Okay,
well.
they have capacity.
So
Yeah.
they have
Okay.
capacity
Yeah.
to
Okay.
consider,
Right.
2019.
Yeah.
Like regarding the music program, it is said here all instrumental music students new to Clayfield College are required to complete an audition. So how does the audition normally done? Through Skype, or they need to come to the campus or?
This has been for their music, like their programs. They have lots of different ensembles, like at the school.
Yeah.
So I think there was about 20 different types of music, like groups that the girls can like join. So that's where the audition will be.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but they would certainly encourage participation. From, from all students, but no, the audition would be once they're enrolled.
Oh, once they
Yes.
enroll, okay. So if they want to join the
Any of the
specific
music
program, they need to do an
They've got to
audition.
prove their ability.
Okay.
And
I think when we were there on Tuesday, there were lists on the notice board of like anyone that was interested in joining the group. So I really don't think they'd be excluded.
Okay.
But it would be on ability, I guess, which
level?
ensemble that you were
Which
placed in.
ensemble?
Yeah. I don't think I'd get a place.
Yeah. Sure.
Anything else about play?
How many students for this school?
I think it's around about 400.
400.
Yeah.
That's in the senior
Senior
school.
school.
Playfield is also co-educational from
Primary.
Primary,
yeah.
The junior schools.
So obviously once the boys finish year 6 or primary school, they then go to, they can't go into the girls' boarding or whatever, but
and the board, that's no boarding in the junior
No
school.
boarding
either.
in the
It's only-
junior
yeah,
school.
From year
Okay.
7.
so if mum and dad came, or mum came out on a guardianship visa, he could certainly attend Playfield.
Now, I'll just make a note, actually looking at Clayfield's website, where it says boarding, and this would apply to most of our schools, where it says boarding from years 5, that would be a local student.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Only from year 7.
So
year
normally
4
it's only
international
year
students.
7
Yeah.
that any of
Yes.
our schools would accept boarding into.
I think that is kind of related to the immigration policy. Like the
Yes.
welfare.
Look, there are exceptions.
Yeah,
And,
and I have had a year 6 girl over in Perth
Mhm.
that went into boarding,
Yeah.
exceptional circumstances, and immigration were
Cool.
quite happy to provide the appropriate visas and cause and whatnot, and approved it also. There are circumstances where they can, but as Deb said, year 7 is the norm for the boarding schools for international
Year
students.
7.
Yeah.
Okay. Mhm. Yeah.
so we might move on to the New South Wales schools.
So King's first.
Yep, so the King's School.
Yeah.
Everybody wants the King's School.
Everybody.
So big, the campus
Yeah,
is so big.
So the King's School is, look, we all know it's an amazing school, and the history in the school goes without saying. King's School is very difficult to get a student into. Probably 1, maybe 2 students a year
From each country.
that would that we would successfully successfully 1 or 2 a year that like we would successfully be able to place at the King's School, just purely because of
the local
the
students' demand.
the demand and the waiting lists.
So long.
Yeah, there are.
Their waiting lists are huge. Going back to Brisbane Grammar School has a waiting list through to 2029.
2029?
Yes.
Yeah.
2029. But that's for local students.
That's for local.
Yes.
Okay.
That's for local.
But some partners they ask about this question. They say if the PR or citizen students are willing to pay international students fee, can they be considered as can they have the quota of international students?
What
Yeah.
Brisbane Grammar School, for example, and indeed the King's School, they're heavily waitlisted
Yeah.
for
Local.
domestic local students.
Yeah.
If a student has been on that wait list, say to enter year 7 2020,
Yeah.
and the parents registered their application 5 years ago, and he's been progressing through the waiting list. If a student comes along from China or holds a temporary resident visa, and that cohort's full, the Kings are going to look at the length of time that student's been on that waiting list, where the parents have been prepared to put him on the waiting list, and your student comes along, they're not going to bump him off to allow him to go in and take his place. They will give preference to the domestic student that has been on the waiting list.
Okay.
Right. Okay. Right.
Yeah.
Having said that, if you have a good applicant, always present him to us.
Okay. Sure.
And we will always present them unless they're a student that requires 30 weeks ELICOS, wanting to go into year 10 or year 9 or year 8. Just look at just present him to us, and we will certainly, if we feel he has the attributes that Kings are looking for, the same with Brisbane Grammar School. If we feel he's the right candidate, we will go ahead and present him to those, even though we know they're really full. There could always be room for the right candidate.
Okay.
That's the way we look at it.
How many
question.
international students they have? Sorry.
Kings, I think
Just
they're
roughly.
capped at about 5% of the
Yes.
total
5%.
capacity, and that's probably about all our schools would be
Yes.
capped at about 5%
5%.
of their capacity would
Okay.
be international students.
Okay.
So that's where I sort of go to with your question, Mike. if you've got a student that's on a TR, PR visa, as far as that capped capacity or the percentage of international students, they're not going to be included in that international student percentage of the school. They'll still be classed as a local applicant. So, as Pauline said, they're not going to bump another student off a waiting list purely because parents are happy to pay more.
Everybody wants to can pay more.
And I know there are schools, it is well known that there are some schools that are happy for a parent to pay
to make a contribution
to get a place in the school. King certainly won't. Brisbane Grammar certainly won't.
And Hutchins.
Brisbane Grammar School, without disclosing too much details, had an applicant last year whose father was probably one of the richest men in the world. That boy didn't get a place at Brisbane Grammar.
No.
He didn't meet the entry requirements.
Regardless of what was offered.
So so they are very particular about the enrolment process and that it follows the same protocol
and processes
as if I was applying for my son to go to Brisbane Grammar School. So it's very fair and very well deserved if the student is offered a place at the school.
Hills Grammar?
Hills Grammar. So Hills Grammar is co-educational from prep through to year 12. It is
75 students capacity for international students.
75.
It's
they've got about 1,700.
a homestay school, so it's our only school within the ABSI portfolio at the moment that is a homestay school. The homestays are arranged by the and that was all I actually was given initially, and that sort of starts setting the alarm bells off, thinking what's gone on and why has this school decided they don't want him after all. And I asked for him to actually write me a letter and just sort of let me know what had happened and why he now wants to go to another school. And that was great. That sort of, I read it, was very open. he was very honest about like what had gone on, and that sort of changed my opinion that, well, no, we're not going down this path to, okay, well, look, he deserves another like chance. Let's have a look. So it's always good to get as much information about the student, not just what's written on a school report, because a lot of school reports say that the students like got straight A's like since they were in utero.
Yes. Always. But also it's important too, and Deb and I would not be able to stress this point strongly enough. Many a times our schools will want to have a Skype interview with the student. We sometimes do it. Some of our schools like to do it themselves. And one of the first questions I can guarantee you is the person interviewing will say, so what do you know about
Our school.
our school? And when the student sits there and doesn't know anything about the school, that indicates that he or she has not done any research himself or herself. That will then lead the person interviewing to ultimately say, so have you been included in the decision process, or is it purely a mum and dad's? And that's very important. If the student really doesn't want to go, that will come through at that Skype interview. So I stress, investigate, learn about the school that they're applying for, so they have a knowledge and they can say, look, I've been on your website, I love doing art, and I've seen what your art department or your music department, the ensembles that your music department, and it's very important. That shows us and it shows the school that they are interested in that school. But if they sit there and go, oh, no, it's my mother and Barbara's on, it doesn't go down very well. So the more information you can, the family can provide, we can then present to our schools in such a positive. He might not be, or she might not be the highest academic student, but because he keeps getting all these incredible awards for community service and music, and that counts.
That's right. It's just important to be very honest, very honest in what the students' capabilities are and what their weaknesses are as well, because the school will say, well, that's okay, we've got procedures in place that we can help him or her with this. So that doesn't matter to us. They're not all looking for the perfect student to walk through their door. That's not what it's all about. So just what the real information about it. So Hills Grammar School, our only co-ed homestay school. So the homestay is arranged by the school. A lot of the homestay hosts are current or ex-families of the school.
Okay.
So these are monitored by the school, and whilst the school doesn't collect any of the homestay fees, these are paid directly to the homestay hosts. The schools will monitor the homestay provider. So it's not another organisation that's arranging the homestay. It's all done at the time of enrolment by the school.
Okay.
Normally, the students are given a list of the current families that are available, with a little bit of a brief overview of where the home's situated, what the family dynamic is, and they can choose, I think, 5 options from that list, and then the school will work through that list to place them in their preferred first preference if possible, or if that's not, they'll keep working through. And the families can actually contact the host family and have a a discussion with them and find out a bit more about them before the student's placed there. So it's a very good light system for homestay line students. Hills, as we've mentioned before, they have their own Early-Cost Centre called Hills International Education, which is situated on campus. That's been running for quite some time now. They take students that are at the pre-intermediate proficiency level upwards. Yeah. So, and that's from year 7. So year 7 students are the youngest that are permitted into the course. So, which does sometimes make it a little bit difficult if you've got a student wanting to commence year 7 term 1 but needs some English preparation prior, because they can't actually start into the early cost program until term 1 of year 7.
So normally, how long before the term start date they need to submit the application for international students?
Look, ideally the more time we've got to process it and prepare a student for enrolment, the better. But we quite often have an influx, like at the beginning of the year, like early January, where it's I wouldn't mind starting term 1. Like, and that has happened. We had like quite a lot actually last January, and they all commenced.
And again, that falls back to you as the agent by providing us with all of
the complete
documents. We can get that off. We can submit it straight away, and sometimes a 24-hour, 48-hour turnaround. If it's at the school that can do them that quickly.
Usually, the longest delay is getting documents like
birth
certificates,
notarial translation,
English assessment testing. That's the longest delay for us, toing and froing, like emailing back and forwards, like chasing documentation. Whereas if we've got everything that's listed on the expression of interest form in the checklist section, right from the initial inquiry, we can have a recommendation out to the school, sometimes the same day.
So what I would encourage you, if you have a student that wants to apply to any of our schools, is booked in for assessment testing at the end of March, get all their documents to us now, and we actually pre-prepare the format that we send off to our schools. So as soon as AEAS releases those results, which is usually, I think, 10 days after the test date, we're ready to go. And I will even let the school know that this is when they're going to be released. And we can gauge also just by looking at that student's academic reports that, depending of course on what school they're going to over in Hong Kong and China. But so the faster the better.
And regarding the welfare, because like New South Wales government schools, the guardian is DET, Department. Department. So, for example, Hills Grammar, the school is the guardian, or
the school holds the welfare for a student that's going into homestay. So as far as immigration welfare, so a core, the school issue that. They do also like for a homestay student for them to have a guardian, and this is where it like sometimes causes a bit of confusion for parents and agents as well. It's not a guardian for welfare purposes and immigration purposes. It's really, we need to change the name of it, I think, and call it more as a local parent representative. It's somebody that the school can call on if the student's like very unwell, someone that can represent the family at parent-teacher interviews, somebody that speaks English, so that can liaise between the school and the parents, like if there needs to be a conversation, like directly with the parents. So that's more what that role is. And Hills Grammar prefer ISA
so guardian
service
company.
to provide that. There are exceptions if the family have a close friend or relative that's living in Sydney that is a permanent resident that can speak English and provide that role. They can certainly request for the ISA requirement to be waived in lieu of the family member or friend. But more often than not, it's a ISA guardian.
Okay.
And that also does apply to a student that comes out and may be living with a parent. The parent's holding a student guardian visa. If that parent has very little English ability themselves, the school may also request an ISA guardian to be appointed for that liaison role. Usually for the first 12 months in that case.
Okay. So if the student's living in a boarding house?
So Hills don't have a boarding house.
Yeah, no,
that's home
I mean,
care.
if the student's living in a boarding house, the school staff will perform as a guardian or still like as a third party?
Yeah, still like a third party.
Okay.
So Kings prefer an ISA guardian?
If they do have a contact living in Sydney, most of the schools, if they have a contact, be it a cousin or a friend or whatever, they would like to be able to contact that person as well. If, however, there is nobody available, they always insist on an ISA guardianship.
Tara especially prefer it to be a family member or a friend.
Yes.
Providing the family member or the friend actually knows the student quite well, and they do have a relationship, because there are often family friends that may never have met the student.
Okay.
So in that case, it might as well be an ISA guardian.
So Tara Anglican School for Girls, the international students can enter. Minimum age is kindergarten.
Yes.
Okay.
They've got an early learning centre as well.
Okay.
Yeah. So obviously kindergarten, they'd be with their parent. Up until So kinder to year 6 is a day student only.
Okay.
Living with a parent, and from year 7 to year 12
can be boarding.
Can be day or boarding. Day or boarding. Tara will only permit a day student to live with either their parent or a direct relative. They won't approve a homestay.
Okay. Yeah, because every private school has its own policy regarding the students' welfare.
That's right. So they're quite strict on that. We have a mix of applications for Tara, like day students and boarding students. Neither would be seen more favourably than another, but the requirement for a day student is that they must be living with a parent or a direct relative.
Okay.
And that direct relative would need to be eligible to apply via a 157 for welfare.
Okay.
Yeah, the school wouldn't provide a core.
Tara currently have vacancies year 7 and year 8 for boarding, a couple in both those year groups. So always good to know that.
Yeah, okay. I think year 7 is really a good start for the international students. What do you think?
It is, we think so. I think the year 7 students adapt quicker.
Yeah, sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
They're more bonded because they have friends in the like along if they are in the middle.
Yeah,
Yes,
and year seven's a group where
They're all new.
there's often
yeah,
a
big
lot of new
intake.
students.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they start new.
So
like,
they don't
That's right.
stand out amongst like
yeah.
a year group because they're new coming into year 9 where there may not be any other new year 9 students. So yeah, it puts them on quite an equal playing field like at the start of their high school years.
Next.
And the schools obviously would love year 7 students. Yes.
But if that means that it will be more competitive for the capacity for the same year, if most of them they want to apply for the year 7.
Year 7's normally a year where they increase the cohort. Yeah. So they'll usually take more students, like into year 7 because that's an intake year. So often year 5, year 7, and some schools year 9 are intake years. So yeah, they'll add another stream.
So they will offer more.
There'll be more spaces available in that year group. Yeah. So I think Brisbane Grammar increased their cohort. I think they'll have about 250 in year 7. Yeah.
That's a big one.
But it's including the local.
Yes.
Okay.
And the TR is included for the local
So
students.
Yes.
So the only as far as the numbers that you'll see like as capacity for international students, that is purely students that are on a 500 visa. Yeah, because they're the ones that are reported fall under the CRICOS requirements and in prisons that need to be recorded. So it's only 500 visa holders that fall into those capped numbers. Yeah.
So anything else you want to comment on?
Tara, well, we're looking at this, the Space Adventure. Tara have offer astronomy, and they actually offer astronomy as a subject now. Astronomy,
Year 9?
Yes, I think
It
it is.
starts at year 9.
So it's focused on the STEM education.
Yes,
Very.
yes. And
So-
music.
Whereas I think it
Music,
was a sort of a bit of an elective subject previously, it is now a full science subject that they're offering because they've got their own telescope observatory on campus.
And also has the exchange programs with France, Japan, China. Yeah.
Yes, most of our schools
Would
have a
have
sister
that,
school arrangement.
Okay.
They don't often. Most of them don't offer a lot of study tours a year because they have a lot set up already.
Yeah.
Some of the sister schools, including their exchange programs. So they are looking at long-term enrolments. However, most would consider, not necessarily accept, but would consider a student that wanted to come for 1 semester.
Okay. Yeah.
If that student came from a different area, not Hong Kong or China, from Indonesia, the Philippines, Thailand, all of our schools would look at a 1 semester enrolment. Probably not Brisbane Grammar and the King's School.
2-4 already.
But Playfield College would.
Hills Grammar.
Hills Grammar
The
would.
Hutchins School.
The Hutchins and Collegiate and Playfield most definitely would.
Okay. Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Tara is also about to start they've got another huge sports hub that's being constructed. I think that's about to go out to tender.
Yes.
So it'll be an indoor swimming pool, extension of the gymnasium. Not sure if they were putting squash courts or something.
I didn't.
Definitely a big indoor swimming pool.
Yep.
So, which will be used as, it'll be a 25-metre pool, but it'll be a competition pool. So for short course competitions. Hmm.
So next one.
Shenazana?
Yeah, Genazzano. So Genazzano is our only school we currently have in Victoria. That's an all-girls Catholic school, but again, they will accept students from any denomination or non-denomination. This school will consider students that require a reasonable amount of high school preparation prior to entry.
Mm-hmm.
They prefer, and all our schools we can't dictate where, but they would prefer girls going into the school undertake the Ilocos program at Avalon College,
Okay.
which I'm not sure if you're familiar with Avalon College, which is situated at Geelong in Victoria.
It's a kind of regional area.
Yeah.
But it's like Avalon itself is a boarding.
It is a
That's
boarding
right,
school,
it's a boarding
and that's
school
why
for
they
them.
prefer Avalon, because it is a boarding school and it actually establishes the boarding routine.
Yeah.
And
Uniform.
Uniform,
Yes.
really excellent language college.
Yeah.
Avalon is very well run, very well structured, and provides that great boarding routine for the girls before they transition across into their mainstream. So it's not a big culture shock when they finish their language college and then have to go into a boarding house. Genazzano also have spaces available, I think, across most cohorts. Year 10 might be getting full, but I think most other cohorts have capacity to consider.
And of course, they
2019.
can take students into the junior school. They're registered to, if mum's on a guardianship visa or TR visa or whatever. So I've just put a little Korean family, an older year 5 and 2 year 2 twins. So they were very excited. Yeah. So.
And we might flick to our lovely Tasmanian schools.
Maybe plays a video.
Certainly.
It's called the Hutchinson School. Yeah, it's in Hobart, Tasmania.
So it's
This one, right?
No,
No.
it's on the enrollment, international. This one, so we'll give them the subtitles.
Established in 1846, the Hutchins School has earned its reputation as one of the leading schools for boys in Australia. Hutchins provides students with an outstanding education and internationally recognised qualifications. Located just 5 kilometres from the Hobart CBD, students enjoy a high-quality lifestyle in a safe and secure boarding facility with access to outstanding academic programs.
In Tassie, the weather is really good. It's sometimes chill, but when the sun comes out, it's warm and nice. At first, when I come here, it's kind of struggle because I don't know anyone, but the people here are friendly, show me around. It's very close communities, in Tasmania, so I feel great here.
The exceptional learning programs on offer at Hutchins are designed to stimulate and interest our students. Boasting state-of-the-art facilities, Hutchins enjoys a proud history of outstanding academic excellence. Students consistently rank amongst the highest academic achievers in Australia, including 23 Rhodes Scholars.
I'm surprised how well the facilities and how high quality it is in Hutchins. It feels like a university almost. It's very rarely you can see this kind of school in Hong Kong, in Asia. Classrooms big, not very much people in one class, so the teacher can concentrate on each of the students.
Students are provided with every opportunity to succeed at Hutchins. Personalised, challenging and supportive learning environments provided by outstanding teachers provide support and enhance each student's academic potential.
As an international student, I always think it's interesting to see how different the teaching style and school are different from my home country, Hong Kong or China. It's very free, it's very self-directed. The teacher very supportive, they always listen to you, they give you help, not just on the books, but how to be a good man.
Boarding provides an opportunity for boys to be mentored and supported in a safe and welcoming environment. In 2012, the school's boarding facility, Burberry House, underwent a full refit and refurbishment to world-class standards. Students enjoy spacious, attractively furnished rooms and bathrooms and welcoming leisure areas. Boarders' meals are often the envy of deaf students, with our chef catering for all dietary requirements and providing a variety of delicious meals.
You can actually feel the whole family in the boarding house. We're close together. We're not just like mates. We are kind of like family. And when I have problems, you can always go to the next door and say, hey, how to do this question. And always feel very warm in the boarding house, not in temperature, but
He's keen to come out.
Senior students from Hutchins are prepared for a lifetime of high achievement. With strong links to the University of Tasmania, just a short 5-minute walk from the school, students are able to undertake accelerated courses to obtain university credits while still studying in years 11 and 12. The Hutchins School offers an exceptional academic program in a safe and picturesque boarding environment that is second to none in the Southern Hemisphere. We invite you to explore the opportunities we provide for boys to become their best.
Okay, yeah.
So we played that video because there's sometimes a bit of a misconception that it's a lower standard of education that you would receive in a more regional area, which Hobart is classed in Australia as a more regional area than perhaps Brisbane, Sydney or Melbourne. And as you can see from that, that's certainly not the case. The benefit, however, of regional areas of Australia is often the tuition and sometimes the boarding fees are considerably more affordable.
There's another question.
Yeah.
How many international students are currently studying Hutchins?
Currently, there's probably about 17.
17.
Yeah.
How many students altogether?
900
Yeah,
across,
yeah,
across
okay.
That would be from the early learning centre
Through to
right through to year 12.
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. But so there's a capacity of about 60 boys in the boarding house, and that would include local, there's some of the local students that may even live in Hobart, especially year 12, often come into boarding, like when they're preparing for exams, they prefer to be in boarding.
Mm-hmm.
Country, Tasmanian or Australian. I know there's one boy that actually lives in Darwin, or his family are in Darwin, that he's boarding in Tasmania, so he couldn't have really got any further away from his home in Australia.
Darwin to Tasmania.
And yeah, I think currently about 15, 17 international students who range from China, Hong Kong, Thailand, and then maybe, I think there's
Vietnam?
not sure that there's a Vietnamese boy there at the moment. Malaysia?
Possibly.
Yeah.
Possibly.
So a very small international cohort. It's again, like, you know, as I said, recently refurbished the boarding house. It's fabulous boarding house. The director of boarding is just
Amazing.
Amazing. There's no other word to describe him.
Unbelievable.
The rapport the boys have with him.
And respect.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
He lives, his residence is beside the boarding house, and there obviously are other staff that work in the boarding house as well, but he lives there, his wife and his two young children.
Yes. Yeah.
And their dog.
Okay.
So it's very family orientated
orientated.
boarding environment.
Where can we see the fees?
Fees. I'm not sure if might be
international.
Or you can just. Should be English. As you mentioned, about
Yes.
20.
About 28,000.
Yeah,
The-
28.
The tuition fees are, approximately 28,000. They may be slightly less actually, 28,000 per annum.
Mhm.
That
Boarding
is for
fee.
year seven
Seven.
tuition,
Okay.
and that doesn't increase.
Right.
It's year 7 to 12 is the same tuition fee each year, and boarding is approximately 19. It was something, was it 27.1 or?
The tuition fee is 28,840, and the boarding is $20,020.
Yes.
Okay. So in total, around
50.
About roughly 50,
Yeah.
by the
But
time.
there's probably an additional fee.
You've got your application fee, your uniform fee.
Yeah.
Also payment, yeah. And a month fee.
So, but substantially lower if you compared that to, say, open up Brisbane Grammar School or the King's School.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just was keen.
Hills Grammar, Hills
Yes.
Grammar
Is,
School.
Yeah, so look, Kings would be, they said about 40,000 or a bit over 40 for just the tuition for year 11, 12.
Yeah,
yes.
Yeah. And then
you're boarding,
and then
and
boarding
they've got
on
the
top
scale
of that.
going up too,
Yeah.
so it's,
So it is
relatively more affordable.
certainly more
Yes.
affordable,
Yeah.
but definitely not a lesser quality of education. And look, and
Has a good view.
yeah, that could be a distraction for the
Yes.
students, the view. But Hobart itself, it's a safe environment.
Yeah.
It's a much less slower pace than of course of the big cities.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
easy to get from one place to another. You're not stuck in a traffic jam for
Yeah.
like an hour.
Yeah. There's another question on the group.
Yeah. So Bo asked, do most of the students graduate from Huntington Progress to UTAS or private to as a?
Look, I think it's the same as most schools. I think throughout Australia and especially in Tasmania, the opportunities are any university. Certainly, UTAS has a strong affiliation with the Hutchins School, so they would certainly be encouraging boys to attend UTAS. And look, we need to remember as well that UTAS is ranked in the top 2% of universities in the world, so it is a high ranked university. But a student can study anywhere in Australia that graduates from the Hutchins
Anywhere
School.
in the world.
Anywhere they want. And the benefit of studying in a regional location in Australia is though the additional points or the reduction more so in the entry requirement for a university course because of those regional points. So that's automatically awarded.
Okay.
So St Michael's Collegiate, this is our last school, also located in Hobart. So St Michael's is located just on the fringe of the CBD of Hobart. It's a girls' school from early learning centre right through to year 12 and is sort of classed as the sister school of the Hutchins School.
Yeah.
So a lot of boys that attend Hutchins, their girls are at collegiate and vice versa.
So how many students in total for the St. Michael's?
I think they're around 700, but that I would have to check that.
Okay.
It's similar size to the Hutchins School. Their boarding house takes, I think, slightly less than Hutchins. I think they're about 48.
48.
Pauline, can you recall the boarding house 40 is the capacity, 48 or?
I thought it was between 45 and 48 kids.
Yeah.
And so they've got room in their boarding house.
Yeah. So I think they've only got about 25 boarders at the moment.
Okay.
Okay.
The head girl in the boarding house is Chinese.
Oh, really?
I met her the other day, most delightful girl. She started, I think, in year 9 at the school, and she's now head girl in boarding house. Voted by her peers as the head girl, so very multicultural school, very accepting school. Again, beautiful historical environment, and the girls work closely in their senior years, year 11 and 12, with the Hutchins schools. So it's a sort of a semi-co-curricular environment. If there's a particular course that's not available at collegiate that the girls wish to study and it's offered at Hutchins, then they go to Hutchins for that class.
Okay.
The school bus, Hutchins and collegiate both have their own school bus, so the girls at the end of their lesson might hop on the school bus and go back to their respective schools or the boarding house. The girls in boarding of a weekend, there's lots of activities, some compulsory, some optional, and a lot of these activities are coordinated with the boarding house at Hutchins as well.
Okay. The fee is around.
The fees are similar. We're just bringing up the fees, but again, very competitive compared to mainland schools.
International fees.
It's all right, we're just bringing them up.
Oh, sorry.
Okay. 29,100 for years 5 to 12. But let's talk year 7 to 12.
Yeah.
Right? And boarding is 22,850.
Yeah, similar.
So very
Hutchinson.
similar to Hutchins.
Yeah,
Yes.
50,000
Yeah.
AUD per year.
Yeah.
Altogether. Yeah. Good.
So I think that's about all.
So we've been going through the 2 private schools in Brisbane, Clayfield College and Brisbane Grammar, and 3 schools in New South Wales, which is the Kings. Very hard to get in.
Very hard.
And then Hills Grammar is the only homestay that the school offers homestay
And co-education.
co-education. And then is the Tara Anglican School for Girls. For Victoria, it's the name is a bit
Genazzano.
Genazzano.
Yeah.
Like Latin or
I think it is Latin.
Latin,
Yeah,
right?
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so Genazzano, girls boarding school.
What does FCJ mean?
It's the I had that yesterday.
FCJ.
It's got something to do with the
Oh
nuns
yeah,
and order.
fidelity, courage, and not this one. Not this one.
No, it's the order of the nuns that established the school.
the school.
Oh, okay.
Oh, there you go. Faithful companions of Jesus. That's what.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they were the nuns.
And also 2 private schools in
Not that there's
Hobart.
not that the nuns are like running the school now.
Yeah.
And the 2 Hobart schools, St Michael's Collegiate. And the Hutchins.
Okay. So if you guys need any other further information, you can feel free to ask for us, and we will request relevant documents from ABSI. Okay, so thanks very much for Deborah and sorry, Polly, Deborah and Polly. Yeah. So thanks very much.
You're very welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so that's all for today.
Lovely.
Yeah, well, and see.
Well, thank you very much for giving us the opportunity
No
to
problem.
come in to visit
No
with
problem.
you and
Thanks for your
explain
time.
who we are and
Yeah.
what we can do.